Hey everybody, welcome to the Animation Conversation. I'm Rusty here with my co-host.
What's up, party people? It's your old pal F.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Animation Conversation. I'm Rusty and I'm here with...
It's your old pal F. Hey everybody.
Hey, so how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty darn good. I've had a significant amount of coffee to get me good and wired.
Yeah, I've got some here myself.
I just had a little chat with some of our future listeners on the Twitter Spaces, so I'm all nice and ready to talk somebody's ear off. So what do you say we get to it?
Yeah, let's go for it. So what do you got for us?
Well, I thought, what I thought would be interesting is I feel like a lot of people have an impression of what the animation industry is like, and I wanted to compare that to what it actually is. So I wanted to ask you, now I'm sure you've got a better perspective now that you've been sort of doing this for a while, but what has your impression always been on what it's like to work in animation?
Well, before, to take away what I know of it, let's put it to like a fresh perspective. So like my perception of it versus the reality would be something like animation is just sitting there drawing cartoons all day, not thinking about the entire process where there's storyboarding and character development and layout and software, animation software, and modeling and compositing and all this stuff. You don't really think about all of the things that go into it. You just think about the finished product most of the time. So you're just like, oh, that can't be too hard. They're just drawing cartoons all day. That's what you think about as a kid when you're sitting there watching it. You're like, this has to be really simple to make because, it wasn't really as appreciated as an art form for a lot of years. It was just a kiddie thing, just something on the side kind of thing. So it's not something that was perceived as being very difficult to do, that I didn't think it was difficult until I knew all of the technology and processes behind it.
Yeah, and that's what most people think. And again, you strike me as someone who's always at least, a little bit curious anyway, and you were probably sort of open and keen to question while watching cartoons, even at a young age. You were probably like, oh gee, I wonder how that's done. Most people don't even think that far ahead. By the way,
they just watch it mindlessly.
By the way, bless your hearts, because if we're doing our jobs right, you shouldn't be sitting there thinking about, ooh, I wonder how this is made, or I wonder how this is. You should just be enjoying the story.
It's not a normal thought process for a child to, when they're watching a cartoon, to think, or I wonder how they do that. Yeah.
Yeah, or anybody else for that matter. Most people just, when they sit down to be entertained, they just want to be entertained. So, I'm not poo-pooing the idea of not being curious about it. But again, because cartoons are so sort of intrinsically fantastical and fun, the average person, I feel like, watches them and they just go, oh my goodness, how fun that must be.
Oh,
that just must be so much fun day in and day out. And I'm here to tell you, look, first of all, let me preface this by saying nobody should feel sorry for us. Nobody, particularly me, I've had a great career. Nobody should feel sorry for me. There are way worse ways to make a living, and I've done them. I've worked some really I've washed dishes, I've unloaded trucks, I've dug ditches, I've done all kinds of backbreaking labor in my time. So I am, anytime you hear me talk about this stuff, don't ever mistake it for complaining. I would never complain. My career has been one blessing after another. That said, animation is really hard. And like you said, there's a lot that goes into it that people just probably don't even comprehend just to get a single cartoon made. And
just to interject here real quickly, that was another perception too. So not just like the fact that you're just drawing cartoons all day, but the fact that a lot of people think that there's some people that may perceive it as being something that is easy and extremely fun and stuff. But there's a lot of demands that have to be met. You've got the hours you have to you have the intense attention to detail on top of deadlines and all that kind of stuff. And then the competitiveness of being an older, like as you age, you've got the younger talent coming up and stuff like that. And you have to worry about competition, and then you have to vie for the limited job opportunities that there are within the industry and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of people underestimate the pressures and stuff like that are behind the scenes, behind the art, outside of the art, all the other pressures and stuff that you have to deal with. Because if you could just create, the amount of amazing stuff that would be out there right now it would just be mind-boggling how many great things we would have from some creators if they were just allowed to just create.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a thing. You think about animation and you go, oh, drawing, they're artists. But then you think about, where most cartoons are made, and you go, oh, it's Hollywood, and so it's show business.
Yeah.
And the fact is, it's a little bit of both those things. It's like, yes, everyone working, at least in the drawing aspect of animation, and even in music, sound editing, these are all artists. These are all people who either aspired to or went to school for filmmaking, art, editing, all music, sound, all these different things. These are all artistic people. And suddenly you're throwing them all together in a giant kettle and saying, okay, now play nice and make me a cartoon. And the thing to remember is, once again, forget about just the people who draw. It's a bunch of artists. And my goodness, artists can be persnickety little bastards. Artists can be
a lot of egos.
Really difficult.
I imagine if you have 3 people in the room, it would be like 30 people in the room with the size of the egos.
Yeah. Well, and even even beyond egos, and my goodness, yes, there are egos. But even with the best of people, even though I like to think that I went into it with very little ego because I had no track record and nobody knew, anything about me. But there's still that artist sensibility, it's we tend to be a sensitive lot, we tend to, we can be temperamental, especially when it comes to, and that's one of the first things right out of the gate that you got to get used to is, you're not just sitting around drawing at your own pace. You're drawing at the pace that is necessary to get finished on time. And you've got someone above you looking at your precious drawings. And I'm sorry, but every single time you draw something, you're giving a little tiny piece of yourself, like, to the world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's what the art, period. Yeah. Whenever you put your art out there, you're giving a piece of yourself for sure. Just like right now.
Then to have someone look at that and go, no, that's wrong. It's
it's troubling. Yeah.
It took some real getting used to. And then add to on top of that, people don't think about this very often, but animation is part of the entertainment industry.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I always refer to it as the redheaded stepchild of the animation industry. And as much as in my time living in Los Angeles, to me it became like just sort of really painfully apparent that in terms of the entertainment industry, animation was the lowest rung on that ladder. Like talk radio was above us.
Absolutely. And that's what, like, I like to see now how big animation has become, and I think it's a lot of the adult animation and stuff like that really helped with it. But I'm ready to see the new direction with Cartoon Network, this new pure animation direction that they're going back to, like the roots kind of thing, because the roots of Cartoon Network are huge for me and the TV that I watched as a kid, especially with Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Like, I loved late night TV, period. Like, but that right there really changed a lot of different things for me for like my comedy perspective, and like what ended up setting up my comedy tastes. And I'm really interested to see what happens with the entire network now that they're moving in this new direction. But you did mention something about you give your art and your art gets criticized and torn apart and stuff like that. So that's another thing that a lot of people really don't understand about animation and creating cartoons and things like that and creating a product for the entertainment industry as you called it. So animators don't they don't get to be as creative as you want. You don't get to come up with all of your own ideas. So you get to have, some relative, that you're there to put creative input into it and projects and stuff like that. But you have the constraints of the style, the story, the client brief. You have to keep everything within the vision of the director or the producer and what they want. So you have to play within the color within the lines, if you will. So you don't get to, a lot of people think, okay, well, if my cartoon gets picked up, yeah, but it might get picked up, but the director, the producer, the company, they get to decide the direction and everything goes. Yeah, you created the characters, you created the feel, you created maybe some of the atmosphere and the emotion of it, but a lot of everything else gets created, based upon how well it does in a test or how well it does in things like that. So, it's tough.
Coloring within the lines is really a pretty brilliant metaphor, because that's exactly it. When my first real studio job was on the Wild Thornberries at Klasky Csupo, and you would look at that show, and because of the design style, the design style is very quote unquote cartoony, in that they certainly don't look realistic.
No, absolutely not. I've seen people I've seen some British guys with big noses, but I don't think I've ever seen one that exaggerated.
Oh man, Nigel Thornberry is a bitch to draw, but he's also fun to draw. But
also a fun character. I like his
great.
character. He's awesome.
I loved anytime I had Nigel in anything, it was always fun. Except he was so damned hard to draw, and that's what I'm getting at. It's like. Again, I grew up with Bugs Bunny and Woody Woodpecker and Underdog and stuff like that. That's what I was, setting myself up to draw. And then suddenly, this model sheet of Nigel Thornberry is put in front of me. And I mean, everyone do a quick Google search of Nigel Thornberry's head and just try and draw that about 3,000 times. It's really complicated.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you didn't get it just right, it got handed back to you and you were told, no, this is off model. You need to put this on model. And that's why the metaphor of coloring in the lines is so perfect, because everyone comes out of, every artist sort of walks around with their own style in their head. And one of the things you need in animation is the ability to sort of become a visual chameleon, and draw in lots of different styles. And I was prepared for that, but I wasn't prepared for the style of like the Wild Thornberries. That was just so far removed from every cartoon that I ever grew up with. I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I even supposed to do here? And, my directors would always complain that my storyboards were off model. I was always drawing the feet too big, the hands too big. I was doing too cartoony stuff. And, but again, that's something that as an artist in the industry, that's what's expected of you. You don't get to make every show your own. And that's why right away I was like, wow, I really have to color in the lines. But what you wind up doing as someone in the industry or as an artist is, despite the fact that you have this very, very, very small sandbox play in, you find tiny little ways that you can sort of inject yourself into the work that you do. And I mean tiny, but they're there. But that's kind of the only way you make it satisfying, like, at all.
Yeah. So, and this is another one too, that another point that I had here. So for about perception. So a lot of people might perceive it to be like an extremely glamorous job. I'm sure there are some perks to it, but getting work on high profile projects, or maybe attending a premiere and stuff like that, and getting to be a part of some of those things. But like the day to day is really just like, especially in the day and age that we live in now, you're sitting in front of a computer for 12 hours a day, like cranking out animation, cranking out drawings after drawing after drawing. So it's really mundane. Yeah, like something like that. That's beautiful. Yeah,
you're sitting in front of one of these things.
Beautiful. I love it.
staring into it. And
I love it.
um yeah, and that's 100% true. The people in the industry who get the most, at least in animation terms, the first question everybody always has about it is, do you get to meet the voice talent? Do you go, who does the voices? Where are the voice? Everyone always wants to know about the voices.
Yeah, the voice
And by
talent.
the way, I get that because it's the easiest part of the whole pipeline to understand, and it's the part where, it's not complicated, and it's like it's the acting and the telling of jokes and all that sort of stuff. So it's, people are always fascinated by that. One of the things that I encountered really early on, after I started as a storyboard artist, is, I went home for Christmas that first year back in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and people would say, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm working on a cartoon for Nickelodeon." And like, "Oh, wow, so are you making the actual drawings that appear on the screen?" I'm like, "No, I'm a storyboard artist." And nobody knows what that means.
Yeah. A lot of
They
people
don't
don't know what
understand
storyboard artist is. Yeah.
that as a storyboard artist, I outrank the guy who's doing the actual drawings that appear on the screen. Like,
Yeah,
they
for
want,
sure.
and you try and explain storyboarding to just the average person, and it just goes
It
in
doesn't
one
make a
ear
lot
out
of
the other.
sense. Yeah, it doesn't. Like whenever I first was, when I looked at it from a surface, just the straight up Merriam-Webster definition of what a storyboard artist is, it really is just not. It's just not. It's very vague. It's not very much description, and yeah. So when I first was like looking at the surface of it, I really was confused as to what actually a storyboard artist even does.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, well, it's kind of impossible to explain in any sort of quick and
Yeah.
easy fashion,
Yeah.
because every show has a different need for their storyboard artists. Like, every show has a different style that they take with their storyboards, and so, there's no one solid explanation as to what a
Yeah, well,
storyboard
that's the
artist
way
is.
I always like perceived it. Is it's like the jack of all trades. It's
Yeah,
the guy who knows a little bit about everything to put it all together in a neat way to put it into a put it out there as a finished product kind of thing. That's the way I always saw it. It was like a builder, if you will. It's the guy who,
yeah,
all right, I've got the bricks, I've got the
yeah,
mortar. Let's put the bricks and the mortar up, and then let's do this. Let's put the electricity in. Let's put the
yeah,
plumbing in. That kind of thing. That's the way I always kind of the analogy that always comes to my mind when I think of a storyboard artist.
yeah. And that's the thing. Even after I became a director, I'll be the first to say, and this is just my impression, and this is just my opinion, but in my opinion, storyboarding is way more important than directing. Like, you can have a terrible director, but if you've got a great storyboard artist, then the cartoon will
Well, it's
still
like
turn.
pre-direction though, right? Like pretty much what a storyboard artist is doing pre-direction. It's like you're setting
Yeah.
everything up, and then the director just does little tweaks and things like that as it goes along, right? Is that pretty much how it goes?
Well, yeah, and that's the problem is, now animation directors, or directors in animation, because those are two different things, and that's a whole
Absolutely.
tangent I could go down. But if you were to translate this into live action terms, the director would be the director, and then the storyboard artist would be almost be the assistant director. Um,
Yeah.
so again, storyboard artists, it just it encompasses so much of the process. Like, these days, when I'm working as a storyboard artist and people ask me, "Oh, what do you do?" I just say I make cartoons, because that's what the storyboard artist does. The
Yeah,
storyboard
absolutely.
artist makes the cartoon. Now, before I start getting a bunch of people angry at me, that is to take nothing away from anybody else in the process. And by the way, I don't think I'm stepping on any toes here, because every time, I worked as a storyboard artist, I was always buddies with, like, the character designers and the prop designers and background designers, and even, other directors and editors and sound people and production assistants, all these people, and they would all look at the board artists like, "I don't know how the hell you guys do it." Like,
Yeah.
they just didn't get it. And they didn't try and get it. And look, I hate to say it, but that's kind of the appropriate attitude, because the board artist makes the cartoon. And when you're a director and you get handed a show, man, the first thing you got to think about is, oh my God, I got to get the very best storyboard artist I can. Um, and that again, that's one of the things. Like I said, when the average person thinks about animation, they don't think about storyboard artists, and they don't even think about directors. They just think the people sit down and they draw out the cartoon. They don't realize, just how much planning and so much of that hinges on the board artist.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. Yeah. I guess the last point I really had, I didn't really have a whole lot of points, but the last point, a lot of people think that with the glamour comes money and fame and things like that, which I know that there is a certain level of comfortability that you get once you're established in the industry for sure. But like when you're first starting out, it's all contract work anyway. But like you're scrambling at the bottom level with 100 other hungry dogs, if you will, and you're all fighting for what amounts to scraps, and it's all about getting the experience and stuff like that, which, well, a lot of people are like, well, how does somebody, eat off of exposure and stuff like that? Well, a lot of people don't get to eat off of exposure, but you have to get the experience kind of in there. You have to eat a couple ramen noodle cups and some hot dogs with cheese wrapped around them, you know what I mean, to get the calories going. And that's just a part of anything. Nothing that is worth doing is going to be easy. So, what is your perspective on? I don't really like to pry into that, but I think that's an interesting perspective for a lot of these young kids out here doing this animation, and because I think a lot of people get discouraged when they get that first paycheck from doing their first project, and they're like, well, he made, I put in a big hearty meat worth of effort, and all I got was beans back, so it's. So it could be, sometimes it could be distressing for people.
Well, it's funny, and I think I can talk about this pretty openly, seeing as how, for me, this is all 25 years ago. So,
yeah, absolutely.
It's not like I'm exposing anything that is going to set the world on fire. But, first of all, in terms of glamour, animation has gotten significantly more hip and more cool and more glamorous. So comparing today saying that if you walk into a room and say, hey, I do storyboards for American Dad, or I do character design for Rick and Morty, people are wildly impressed.
Oh yeah, no, well, I'm going to go ahead and talk on that real quick. So I have talked about this podcast with every human being that has crossed my path for the last few weeks, and whenever I mention that I'm doing it with the storyboard guy from Fairly Odd Parents, they're like, well, how'd you get that guy to talk to you? How did you manage to do that? So, no, I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's definitely different, because I think what makes it different is a lot of that era of cartoons from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. A lot of these, we all have disposable income now. We all have money that we can spend on whatever we want. And a lot of the ones that were impoverished now have money. They can now go spend money on the things that they couldn't when they were in childhood. So they're reliving their childhoods. Now they're in their 30s and 40s. And I think that's what a lot of this is. This niche type of stuff, and that's why I think podcasts are thriving right now, is because it's all this niche stuff, and a lot of it is speaking to the audience, the millennial audience, and they're getting to relive their childhood because they have a Boy Meets World podcast that has the cast of Boy Meets World. They're doing all these. I think. Even iCarly, I think they have a podcast where they go through the show, so there's all these podcasts that are coming around and all this stuff. And I like that we could be a central location for all of those different things, so I don't know. Well, again, I like it, man.
I know I'm not saying anything revolutionary when I say that the internet changed everything, but the internet changed everything.
It did. It really did.
When I was working on the Fairly Odd Parents or Chalk Zone or Invader Zim or anything like that, there was no way to sort of discern if anyone was liking the show apart from, maybe ratings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there, the internet, even though it was around, it was still pretty young. And yeah, there were a couple of news groups here and there, but there were no, right now there's probably like 500 Invader Zim websites and chat and just everything devoted to Invader Zim and talking about how much
Oh,
they
it's
like it. We didn't
huge.
have
Yeah,
any of
Invader Zim
that.
is huge. Yeah,
So now, you can go on Twitter or on Discord and say, "Hey, I worked on Dora the Explorer," and 50 people will rush you and be like, "Oh my gosh, I grew up with that." And that's the other part of it is, the people that I was working to entertain are now in their early 30s or late 20s or whatever,
yeah.
and they were you guys were fortunate enough to grow up in a time when there were a lot of good
A
cartoons.
lot of great,
Um,
like it was crazy how many cartoons. Well, because I grew up in the era when I grew up at the beginning of
yeah,
Nickelodeon, the beginning
yeah,
of Cartoon Network, the beginning of Boomerang, even because I loved Boomerang.
right.
Boomerang is actually probably the channel I like the most until they kind of don't air the stuff that I like anymore, so I don't watch it anymore. But yeah, so we grew up in that, like you said, we grew up in that era where there were just so many good cartoons, so
Well,
many
and the
good
result the
cartoons.
result of that is, you guys all grew up with a great impression of cartoons. You grew up and cartoons were a good thing in your heads. And so consequently, even though you outgrew, watching kids' cartoons, as you all became adults, you said to yourselves, well, wait a minute, we want more. But we
Yeah, yeah,
want
yeah.
stuff that's geared to us. And that's where you got The Simpsons, The King of the Hill, Family Guy, American Dad, Rick and Morty, stuff like that. And that's why, in my opinion, from what I can tell, that's why the adult animation boom happened, was because of Nickelodeon and because of Cartoon Network and
Oh,
because of
yeah, you can't forget Adult Swim. Yeah, they created a whole
adult.
ton of stuff.
Well, sure, but I'm talking about like before that.
Oh, before all
you
that. Yeah, yeah,
guys
yeah.
grew you guys grew up loving cartoons.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the 70s and 80s, cartoons were rough. Cartoons were not that good for a lot of that period of time. And so, yeah, some people grew up watching, Transformers or something like that, and they've got good memories of it, but that didn't lead them into adulthood saying, ooh, I want to watch more cartoons. Whereas
Yeah,
you
I
guys
think my dad's an
good.
anomaly then. I think my dad's an anomaly. My dad really he liked a lot of cartoons. So the reason why I probably watch cartoons a lot now as an adult too was when I was a little kid, my dad didn't have an aversion to watching cartoons. So usually on a
Right,
Saturday morning, cartoons would end whenever the parents came in the room and changed the channel, whatever they wanted to watch. Well, when I was a kid, my
right.
dad would let us, he would sit there and actively enjoy watching through the cartoons. And I think a lot of it is my dad grew up pretty poor and they didn't get a
Yeah,
TV until he was like probably like 9 or 10. He
yeah.
didn't get a TV till like 1970.
Right.
So he missed a lot of cartoons. So he's a heavy, even now he just really likes to watch
Right.
movies and cartoons and stuff. But I remember sitting there watching Gargoyles and stuff with them in the early the
Oh
Batman
yeah.
animated series and stuff like that.
But see, that just makes the time the mid 90s came along, cartoons had gotten good again. You know, if if I had tried to get my dad to sit and watch cartoons with me with the cartoons that I was growing up
Oh yeah,
with,
there was no way. Yeah.
I mean, my dad is not going to sit and watch, Charlie Chan and the Chan Clan or Speed Buggy or some of the just really horrible Saturday morning stuff that I had to endure. So, again, a lot of people from my generation didn't grow up and become grown-ups and go, "Well, where are my cartoons now?" Whereas your generation grew up with great cartoons, and so
Amazing.
as adults, you're like, okay, let's, keep it coming, but now let's have some that are geared for an adult sensibility.
Not
And
only did
so,
we grow up with cartoons, we grew up with cartoons that grew up with us. Ren and Stimpy, when I first watched it as a kid, was this mild, tame thing. Well, not mild or tame, but it was tame enough to be on children's television. And then by the time I'm in high school or junior high, it's on Spike TV, and it's just this
yeah,
wild, raucous, profane show. So like even
yeah,
some of these shows that started out, some of them even grew up with us. So it's like, yeah,
yeah.
it's cartoons
But
are wild.
the thing is now is it's the animation as a thing in the world has become a perpetual motion machine. You know, kids watch cartoons, adults watch cartoons, then kids who become adults watch cartoons, and
Yeah.
their kids watch cartoons, and et cetera. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that didn't exist before. And I do think that that's what has sort of brought us to where we are today, where everybody enjoys animation, everybody enjoys, there's something out there for everybody. And it's a great, even though the industry itself goes in slumps and peaks and valleys and stuff, we have gotten past, I believe, the point where anybody ever really seriously says cartoons are for kids.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely. I got a really kind of unique perspective too, because I grew up for the first 6 years of my life in England. So
hmm
I got a lot of British shows when I was a kid. So there was a lot of animation over there, and the animation at that time was different over there than it was in the States. Animation over there was a lot of stop motion animation, a lot of claymation when I was a kid watching stuff. A lot of the shows I watched were like Postman Pat. There was a show
hmm
called Naughty.
I know about
Uh,
Naughty, sure.
of course, you had Ringo Starr on Thomas the Tank Engine at that time.
Yeah,
I used to watch a lot of that, but and that's why I think I really like I really appreciate stop motion animation and
yeah,
claymation. I appreciate both because both styles, doing it on drawing and then doing it like that, they're both equally challenging. They both have their
yeah,
own challenges, but I really, really, really like a lot of the Wallace and Gromit stuff too.
yeah.
I
Oh,
really
Wallace and
just
Gromit is
love.
genius.
I just love Wallace and Gromit and the California Raisin stuff too.
Yeah.
The guy, I can't remember his name, but he's somebody we'll eventually have a conversation about. He went to University of Oregon, I think is where he went to. He was the guy who like invented stop motion animation or claymation. I think it was claymation he invented or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the guy who did the California Raisins and stuff like that. He was the main guy
Wow.
to create all that. But that's some of my favorite stuff. I really, really love Wallace and Gromit is just, I don't know, it's just great.
Yeah.
It's
No,
classic.
what Aardman Animation, Wallace and Gromit in general, I mean, that's their royalty, their animation royalty. There are it's funny, and we're getting off on a whole different thing, but who cares?
Yeah. That's what it's all about.
There
Yeah.
there are certain factions in the entire animation community that sort of cross party lines, and all you have to do is mention the name Studio Ghibli, and everyone, it's a hushed reverence.
Yeah. It is.
All you have to do is mention Aardman Animation, Wallace and Gromit, and it's hushed. Oh
Which,
yes.
not to interrupt you, but if anybody from Studio Ghibli or anybody from Ardmore happens to hear this podcast in any way, shape, or form, we would love to have you on and have a conversation with you. That'd be great.
Oh man, would we ever? It's yeah, it's and that was kind of one of the things that people probably don't think about a lot as well, is that animation is this big legacy medium. That
Absolutely.
when you talk about Disney, one of the first things you hear about is the nine old men,
The
and
Nine Old
those
Men.
were,
Yeah. I was just
yeah,
actually, it's
those
funny you mentioned that. I was just reading about them and watching videos on them last night.
yeah, that they were, for those who don't know, they were Walt Disney's top nine key animators who really just made the studio what it is, and made the entire
Not only
industry.
that, some of them worked all the way up until like 2001 on Disney
Oh, absolutely,
projects. Is
yeah,
what's crazy about
yeah.
these Nine Old
Frank
Men is
Thomas
they
and
were
Ollie
there from
Johnson.
like the 30s all the way to like 2001. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's a long
Yeah.
career to be doing. Like, I couldn't imagine how sore their hands and how arthritic their hands must have been from doing it in such a non-ergonomic way. I imagine the ergonomics are a lot better nowadays than they were for the earliest of animators from the 30s, but
Yeah.
I can imagine their hands were gnarled.
Well, and what's funny about those guys, and by the way, I've met Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson, two
Oh,
of
wow.
the nine old men.
Wow.
Shared a bathroom with them. I'll tell that
That's
story on
awesome.
another podcast.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, no, I can't
But
wait.
but well, no, what the hell? I'll tell it on this podcast.
Yeah, we got
There
plenty.
was,
We still got a good 20, 25 minutes.
there was some sort of, oh, I know what it was. It was there was a well, they were being honored at the Directors Guild in Los Angeles. They were
And so they should be, yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
they were being
absolutely,
honored. They
yeah.
were given a night with Frank and Ollie. And this was kind of, at the height of this, probably around 2001 or so. So this was kind of at the height of my Fairly Odd Parents days. And, if there was an animation event going on, I could get into it. And so you bet your ass, I got myself a ticket to go, see a talk with Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson.
Yeah, 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 no, for
And
sure.
what was great about it is it was Frank and Ollie, and they were going to be basically interviewed by Glenn Keane, who is another just rock star Disney animator. He did Tarzan, he did Beauty and the Beast, he did Hunchback of Notre Dame. He was just one of their big key animators. And so it was these three heavy hitters having a talk on stage, and man, it was a packed house, and everyone was just like, oh my gosh, Frank and Ollie, Frank and Ollie, Frank and Ollie, and me too.
Yeah, that's
I mean, I'm
great.
just
No,
like, I
that's yeah.
can't believe I'm here.
Can't get any bigger than that. And when it comes to animation,
No,
I mean,
no,
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they launched an
yeah,
entire
yeah. I mean,
industry off of that. Yeah,
that built Walt Disney. That
yeah.
built the empire. And so I'm there. I'm kind of walking around. Everyone's sort of shuffling around, waiting to take their seats and everything like that. And I'm dressed up. Everyone's dressed up. It's a gala event. And I was like, oh, it's going to start in about 15 minutes. So I'm going to go to the bathroom, because the last thing I'm going to want is to be sitting there needing to pee when Frank and Ollie are talking.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. You don't want to do that.
so I start heading towards the bathroom, and just as I'm approaching the door, I see two guys being pushed in wheelchairs into the bathroom. And because I'm only about 30, and because I'm an asshole, um, as these two guys in wheelchairs are being pushed into the bathroom, I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is going to take forever. And I'm in a hurry. I want to get in and out of there so I can, listen to Ollie and Frank talk. Oh, come on, you guys, move, 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 move. So they finally get in, and then I get in right behind them, and it's Frank and Ollie.
He was trying to rush past them, and it was them.
Right. So of course, immediately
That's
I'm
good.
calling myself every name in the book. I'm
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
you are a, oh my God. So I'm like beating myself up. And so I'm in the bathroom with Frank and Ollie, and I'm thinking of, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so I'm standing there at the urinal, and I'm doing my business, and they had two helpers with them, helping them use the bathroom, as one does when one is in one's 90s.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they just sounded so weak and so feeble and so frail and fragile, and I'm standing there peeing, thinking to myself, oh my goodness, this is sad, this is heart-wrenching. And I hear one of them go, okay, we're all done, Frank, do you want to wait for Ollie? He's like, yeah, let's wait for Ollie. And like I said, the whole time, like I said, being a young douche,
Yeah.
I'm feeling all kinds of pity for them. I'm just like, oh, these poor unfortunate souls. And I'm just like, wow, this is
They
going to be a
probably
rough.
live like kings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
These
undoubtedly.
poor
And again,
unfortunate souls that they shit on
my
gold toilets.
in defense of myself, my feelings for them were out of reverence. Like, I felt
Yeah,
bad
yeah, yeah.
because
No, they're
they're royalty.
they've
They're really
created some of
fucking
my
royalty.
favorite stuff. Actually, my favorite Disney movie ever is really one that a lot of people don't even know about. It's from 1948, and a lot of the reason why a lot of people don't know about it is because it came out right after the war and all that kind of stuff. And
Uh-huh.
it's about a small southern town. It's got a little boy that lives with his grandma. It's called So Dear to My Heart. That
Huh.
is
No,
my
never heard of it.
all-time favorite Disney movie. It's about a little boy that he lives with his grandma on a farm, and one of the lambs, or one of the sheep on the farm, has a black lamb, and she won't take
I do
care of
remember
it.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he wants to take care of the lamb, and the lamb just tears everything up in the town and all that. It ends
Right.
up being a boy. It's a ram. and he ends up putting in a county fair contest or whatever. But yeah, no, that's my favorite Disney movie.
See, and that's a thing. Those the Nine Old Men and all those animators and all this stuff. They did work on some stuff that what not every single thing they did was a huge hit.
No, it
There
wasn't
was some hit and
big.
miss, and
Yeah, not at all.
that's what was great about Disney at the time was they were keen to experiment. So anyway, let me finish Frank and Ollie.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm in the bathroom. Frank and Ollie are doing their business. I'm doing mine, and the whole time I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be a rough night because watching these two try and answer questions and try and get through, like I just thought they were going to be sitting there going, yes, well, I remember when I first met Walt. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be painful. So I go out, I sit in my seat, and I forgot who I went to this thing with, but I looked at her and I said, I just saw Frank and Ollie. Oh my God. But I was like, and they look like they might die tonight. And she's like, what? I'm like, never mind. But again, the whole time I'm expecting them to get wheeled out there and just
Yeah.
wither as we watch. And much to my delighted surprise, the evening starts. Glenn Keane comes out, introduces them. They come on out, and the minute Glenn starts answering questions, the two of them come alive, and they're just like, "Oh, back in the day," and da 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 da
Oh
da.
wow.
And that's when I was like, John, you stupid fool, you. They were in fact incredibly animated,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they were in their 90s at the time. So it was a great little lesson for me. And it's funny, while I was in the bathroom, I kept thinking to myself, do I say anything? Should I say anything to these guys, because they're legends, and I would love nothing more than to shake their hands, but we're in a bathroom. No one's going to want to shake hands with anybody. So, but anyway, that I just thought that was an amazing thing that even at that age, and they talked for hours, and it was amazing, and they had all kinds of perspective and wisdom and all that stuff that I just walked away from it a changed individual, because not only did I get to hear Frank and Ollie speak, I got a little lesson in humility of my own after
Yeah,
sharing
yeah,
about
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we all need those. We all need those. Be humbled every now and again. I actually have ordered their book, Johnston and Thomas, in 1982. After they retired, they published that Disney animation, The Illusion of Life, which sets the 12 basic principles of animation. Which I've read a lot of reviews on it, so I feel like I can recommend it. So anybody out there that's like studying animation or just like curious about animation, go check that book out. I've read a lot of great things about it. I watched a little video about it too and everything. So Disney animation, The Illusion of Life is what it's called, and it lays out the refined 12 basic principles of animation that the 9 old men kind of adhered to while they were at Disney. They all kind of created this 12 the refined process of the 12 principles of animation.
No, it's considered the Bible. Like, and I've got my copy that I bought mine at a time when I don't know if they're printing new ones or what, but I got a very early edition of it, and this was when I was making really good money, and I think I paid like $300 for mine. But it's an absolute must. It's something if you're serious about being an animator or being in animation, you have to read it and you have to learn it. And that's the thing. This sort of dovetails into a excellent point is, because animation has gotten cooler and because animation is now considered a viable career option, and there are schools for it, and there's all kinds of online courses and things you can take, and because it's gotten cooler, there are whole new generations out there that want to become animators, and they're jumping into it, and they've only learned what they've seen on TV. They haven't studied any of the sort of legacy animation. And I gotta say, if you're listening and you're young and you aspire to be in animation, you really do need to go sort of back in time and learn the history and learn, this is
Not
how
only
they did
that,
it back then. And
sorry to interrupt you. Not only that, they need to go watch a lot of that early and go consume it too. Don't
oh
like
yeah,
study the behind the scenes stuff too, but go consume it and watch how they move. Watch some of the early stuff and see how difficult the movement was before the rotoscope,
yeah,
and look at how
yeah,
like how hard it was to create fluid animation before they started tracing over Cab Calloway.
yeah,
Uh, so like I think that's important for like I'm not an animator, I'm not an artist, but I feel like if you're gonna do deep research on something, you got to take it back to the beginning of time, to
yeah,
wherever the origin point is. So you might even need to even go back to Greco-Roman stuff they had and go back as far
yeah,
as you can. Look at all of it, because there's been there's even I've even went back as far and seen it was some anthropological stuff where they had seen where they had
yeah,
done some cave drawings where they had
sure,
tried to convey motion
yeah,
through a series of drawings on a cave wall. So I mean, you got to dig, you got to do your research for sure. And
yeah,
the internet right now is exploded with information. You could
yeah,
literally, like, Internet Archive, if there is
yeah,
like a place that I tell everybody to go to. Internet Archive, archive.org is what the website is. If you want to find anything about anything, like for information to consume, that's a great place to go find stuff.
well, and that's the thing. It's like I get handed a lot of portfolios and sent a lot of links from people who are trying to break into the industry and stuff. And um, you know, I'll look at it and it'll be someone who says they really, really super duper want to be in animation, and I'll look at their portfolio and it's 500 drawings of Naruto, you know,
Yeah.
or it's 500 drawings of characters from Owl House, or it's and that's all great. I look there, I had my periods where all I wanted to do was draw Transformers. I get it.
But there's no
um
range. You got to have like a range. You got to show a range. Yeah.
yeah, you can't. And that's the other thing is a lot of people are into drawing their OCs, their original characters, that are characters that they insert into existing shows. And again, nothing wrong with it. Have a blast, but you don't show that work to get a job in animation. You
No,
just
you don't. No, you
just
don't.
don't. And look, study Naruto. Naruto's a great show. There's a reason it's been around for so long. But you gotta study other stuff too. Because that's the thing, going back to
Yeah, you
both
can't limit yourself to
impressions.
anime. Like anime is good. Like Japanese anime is great, and I love all the like they have a ton and ton of great stuff to consume. But you have to, when you're
Yeah,
looking at animation, you have to look at animation the way I see it, and this is for anything that you do. You don't have to just look at where it's done where you live or where
right.
it's done for what you
Yeah,
like the most. You have to look at French animation, because a lot of people,
yeah, absolutely.
the early French animation, it is a
Yeah,
lot of revolutionary stuff that brings us to where we're at now. A lot of the
sure.
techniques and stuff used. So like you gotta look at the international field of things. You gotta look at
Yeah,
what's being done all over the world and how it's being
yeah. I
done.
mean, there's a wealth of information out there that literally comes from all over the world, and that's another thing to remember is going back to the Nine Old Men. The Nine Old Men, the original like Chuck Jones and Friz Freeling from Termite Terrace, all those guys, none of those people went to an animation school.
None of them went to maybe barely even went to a school. I'm sure some of them
Yeah,
probably
well,
barely even.
a lot of them were architects, or a lot of them were illustrators or
Yeah.
graphic designers. Nobody like the real hotshots probably started out as newspaper cartoonists,
Yeah.
because that's what the word cartoonist meant back then, was you did either comic
Political
books or
stuff. Yeah. Or
newspaper
political.
cartoons.
Yeah.
All those guys studied classical art. They learned how to draw, they learned how to render, they learned how to, you know so all those guys got into animation, but they had a classical art background. And that's another thing. It's like I say, yes, draw your favorite characters, have fun with your artwork and stuff like that, but if you are serious about getting into animation, you have to look at it. You got to look at the big picture. And that big picture means being influenced not just by Naruto or the Owl House or
Yeah.
whatever, being
You can't
influenced
like
by anime, being influenced by European animation, being
yeah.
influenced by, just animation from different generations,
Yeah, because when you're constructing your portfolio, you can't just pull up to Warner Brothers with pictures of just nothing but Naruto. You want to pull up
Right,
to Warner Brothers with pictures of Bugs Bunny, of Yosemite Sam, of Foghorn Leghorn.
right,
You want to show
right,
them everything that you could do within their IPs. You want to show
right.
them all of that, and that. I'm not a part of the industry at all, and I'm just talking, out of the side of my neck. But from my perspective and the way I would see it if I was in the industry is, if you're coming to my studio, I want to
Right.
see what you could create. I want to see what you could do within side of my IPs. What can
That's
you draw of
100%.
everything that I have? It's cool. I know that you like. I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of stuff like what kind of character development you can do, like of your own
Right.
characters. But I don't. I don't want to see IPs from other companies. I want
Yeah.
to see what you could do within my company and maybe what you could do on your own within the scope of what
Right.
we're looking for. And again, that goes back to what we were discussing earlier at the beginning of the show, coloring within the lines and being able to show
Yeah.
what we want, because whenever you submit a resume, you cater your resume to the job you're applying for. You don't
That's
you don't just
100%
throw a
true.
bunch of stuff at the wall that's not relative to the job. You always you want to
You,
you
that
want to
that
put out
raises
a product for the job.
that raises a really, really good point, because one of the things that I learned early on was, I thought, well, I'm gonna have my portfolio, and I was, good at working in different styles really early on, so I just jammed my portfolio full of a little bit of everything. Well, they don't want to see a little bit of everything. They want to know, can you do what we're doing here?
That's it.
So I
Yeah.
wound up developing like 5 different portfolios. It's like, okay, here's my super cartoony Warner Brothers style portfolio. Here's my Disney style portfolio. Here's my, adult animation style. Here's action. Here's like, I had like 5 different types of portfolios, because you really do need to, yes, you should have your one portfolio that's like, here's what I'm capable of. But if you are seeking out specific employment, you should have portfolios ready or demo reels ready that are tailored to different styles. So, if you're applying to Warner Brothers, show them stuff that they'd want to see at Warner Brothers. If you are trying to get a job on the new Batman cartoon, don't show them the stuff that you did for Rugrats,
Yeah,
because it's just
yeah. If
not
you're
gonna
doing
fly.
stuff for Batman, don't pull up with Marvel characters in your portfolio. Yeah,
Well, they won't care about that, because as long as it's superheroes, but they need to be able to at least do the math, and it
yeah,
can't
yeah,
be
yeah,
hard
yeah.
math. It
For
has to
sure,
be
for
like,
sure.
it's like, oh, okay, you worked on, you worked on Paw Patrol, but how's that going to translate? Because we're staffing up for Transformers Energon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, um, it's and again, this all sort of ties back into what people think animation, the industry is like versus what it actually is. And I'm sure most people sort of think, well, if you can draw, then you can get a job. It's like, no, it goes way more complicated than that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I like about this show here that we're doing is I've already in my mind I've already made connections with the other show that I do and with characters and stuff like that, because you've mentioned Transformers quite a few times. What's his name? Oh man, I can't remember his name. Diedrich Bader. He actually does a voice on Transformers Earthspark.
Oh yeah.
The new one. Yeah, he's actually done 7 episodes of that.
Oh wow.
Mandroid is what he plays on that show. But
Huh.
but he also did some characters on King of the Hill too. Which while we discuss animation, King of the Hill is obviously animated, so we're gonna probably hit tons of the tons of the voice actors are gonna have overlap.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of. Actually, the episode we just covered recently had. Early Jennifer Coolidge, at the beginning of her career, she did voice acting on King of the Hill. That's some of the earliest work that she did in the industry was voice acting for King of the Hill. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And see, again, I figure if you probably sat down the average person, they would think that cartoons are made by one person sitting and drawing and another person sitting next to a microphone doing the voice, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, not at all. And I've got a voice actor that I'm going to try to bring on the show as well. His name is Jaden Libran. He's done some voices on actually. He is one of those guys that kind of fell into some stuff like Kismet. He was doing King of the Hill voices during COVID on Facebook. Well, Mike
Right.
Judge happened to come across his King of the Hill voices, his Hank Hill voice. Well, through that, he had his people reach out to that guy, the kid doing King of the Hill voices, and they offered him a job for doing voices on the new Beavis and Butthead. So he does voices on it.
Wow.
So I think he'll be great for us to talk to. He also does puppeteering for Jim Henson Puppets too. So he'll be great to talk
See, that's
to.
the thing. I feel like more and more, whether you're talking about voice actors or background designers or directors, I feel like there are a lot of stories of people who kind of got in the industry through a side door, which is that's my story.
That's great. I got into podcasting through a side door, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's it wasn't something that I thought I would ever do, like I've always created content. I've always enjoyed kind of entertaining and things like that. It's something that I've always been kind of always dabbled in. But actually doing it was something I never thought, like this. So yeah, it's great. So in an effort to wrap this one up, is there anything else that you want to add in there or anything like that? On
I mean,
what we've discussed?
Everyone, do your old pal F a favor and look me up on Twitter at Fountain Cartoon and head straight over to YouTube and like, share, and subscribe. If you follow me on Twitter, then you'll see me advertise about 50 times a day to follow my YouTube channel, Fountain Cartoons.
Yeah, get over there and get it all checked out, guys. At Fountain
And
Cartoons.
and for gosh sakes, everyone, keep tuning into this show because we're kind of in our we're kind of working the bugs out and we're kind of in our rough stages here, but by golly, we have got some A-list guests coming. You are not going to want to miss out on it. I'm going to be telling stories from the industry here, sort of like the one I told today, but that stories that I won't tell anywhere else.
This is the only place that you're going to get these very, very, very first-hand stories. We're not getting a hearsay. We're not getting a letter with a story in it. We're not getting emails. We're not getting direct messages. We're getting it straight from F right here. This is the only place that you can get it too, behind the scenes with the animation industry. Everyone just keep. I'm to let you wrap us up. Thank you everyone for listening. I'll see you on social media and as usual, zig zig ah, party people. There you go. So you could find F at Fountain Cartoons on Twitter and on YouTube there. Go give him a follow and subscribe and like and go through and watch his content. I always tell people if you're going to follow and watch the content. Follows are cool, but follows with interaction are even better. I don't want to have 50,000 follows and only 5 people interact with me. I want, I want 5 follows and 5 people that interact kind of thing. So if you're going to be there, let's get it going. You could also find us at Animation Convo on Instagram and Twitter. Whenever the episodes are aired, because this won't air for a little while yet. Whenever they're aired, there will be a YouTube channel for you to also go find us at, which will be at Animation Convo. And as we go and develop and everything like that, F is going to animate him and I, and once that stuff gets going, I'll be throwing that out into the atmosphere with YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok Reels for you guys. Yeah, so that's been the Animation Conversation. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you enjoyed the show, and can't wait to see what we got cooked up for you guys. Hey guys, you can find us at Instagram and Twitter at Animation Convo. You can find us on YouTube at Animation Conversation, and you can email us at theanimationconversation@gmail.com. Join us again for another Animation Conversation. This podcast is produced by Rogue Media Network.
This has been a Rogue Media Network